Hey guys, I'm Roaring Sun, and I wanted to make a video, not to talk about my thoughts on DSR, but what I've learnt about static and party finder rating in relation to DSR, and more broadly. So a little bit about myself. I'm not your pedestrian raider. I've never done on content Savage tier before. I jumped straight into Ultimates, and I did the Epic of Alexander, and I cleared it. And I went straight into DSR, and I cleared it. But the circumstances in which I cleared DSR could not have been more different from that of T. And that's why I'm making this video, to talk about what I've learned, what this fight has made me learn about static rating and party finder rating. But to start with, this was my first high-end duty. I had no rating experience whatsoever. To be frank, I was a terrible Dragoon player. I'm still, with all great respects, not that of an amazing Dragoon player, but I've definitely gotten better. But when I started raiding in T, I was definitely a weak player. But I joined a group of 8 people, and we cleared the fight together. It took us about a month, but we cleared the fight, and it was a great feeling. And of the 8 people in that group, when we cleared T, 6 of us went into DSR. So I started DSR knowing 5 people. Okay, 5 people that I could trust, that I liked. But DSR exposed my group in ways that T could not. The biggest thing I've learned in a static rating context is that prog is only as fast as the slowest player. T doesn't really accentuate this, right? Once you get out of Living Liquid and BJCC, the last real wall really is Wormhole. Because once you get out of Wormhole, it's just PA, and PA is just a knowledge check, right? It doesn't really expose raiders that, are slow to pick up mechanics. Once you get out of BJCC, it's really only 2 phases shoved right up at you. Living Liquid's just a memorization phase, and BJCC, you can also similarly memorize the overwhelming majority of the mechanics. There isn't really much on the spot thinking to do, which isn't Nisi collisions. But DSR is different. This fight, there's so much randomness in this fight. P2 first trio, P2 second trio, P3, are you, what number are you? Circle, are you an arrow that's up or down? P5, what responsibilities did you get in RAF? What did you get in DOF? Are you a Doom or a non-Doom? Where, P6, are you Mortal Vow Pass or not? This fight is different. If one player makes a mistake, if one player consistently plays poorly, prog will be consistently poorly, right? Unlike T, where once you get out of BJCC, that's pretty much it for the fight, really, with the exception of Wormhole. This fight, it feels like if a player is playing poorly, their performances will spread across every single phase in the fight. If a player is not on the same page as all the other players, you'll not be in for a good time. Okay? And what this created in my static was a growing frustration. Not reaching prog point when, we should be reaching prog points, keep progging the fight to practice the mechanic we're up to. We're taking so long to clean up this mechanic when we should have already cleaned up this mechanic a long time ago. P3 exposed my groups in a way I've never seen before. It felt in my group, P3 felt like clean up forever. Because there was always a mistake from someone in P3. That no matter what, half the pools would be wiped to P3. Okay? This fight is one of a kind. And what this created was growing toxicity in my static. You know, while maybe not intentionally meant to be demeaning, derogatory comments put like, we saw P5 once today and it seems like we're happy and we're done for the night. Because of the growing frustration that this fight can do if only one player is not playing well. And when it's more than one player that's not playing well, it's further aggravated because then it's more likely, by probability, that you're going nowhere. I have never seen toxicity in T in my group. Of course, at times there would be frustration, but no derogatory comments. Not going after players mid-lockout. I had a particular player that went after a particular player mid-lockout when we were progging P2. And we ended up replacing the player that was playing very poorly, in the belief that if we replaced them, we would clear the fight faster, that we would actually be able to clear the fight. But I had nothing like that in T. I never had really anyone make derogatory comments in a lockout, or go after players mid-lockout. But this fight did. Because if one player is not on the page, if one player is not on the same page as everyone else, you're in trouble. And I think what I've learned, maybe this is an observation I've made in regard to ultimates and not Savage tier, which obviously I'm not done because I'm not a Savage Raider, is that I felt like my group did not play like Ultimate Raiders. When I was in T, we had a tank, and that tank wanted to play a different tank when we were doing our totem lockouts. So after we cleared T, we got like 12 totems together as a group. And he wanted to play as a different tank to freshen things up, right? But my group didn't want him to. My group wanted to just get the totems, easy in-out job. And he said, we don't play like Ultimate Raiders. And I never really knew what he meant by that. But then came DSR. And I've learned a lot now about what it means to be an Ultimate Raider. I felt like my group did not play like Ultimate Raiders. What do I mean? If a person makes a mistake, rather than cry about it on the spot, you try to salvage the pool. Now, obviously, you may very well talk about the mistake after the fact, after the pool is done, but you try to keep the pool alive. You persevere. You keep a good attitude every time. You don't go after players mid-lockout. You're focusing on not just how to resolve a mechanic, but how to push the boundaries on resolving mechanics. This is what it is to be an Ultimate Raider. Is to figure out what to do, how to best do it, when to know when you're pushing the boundaries on doing it, and while you're doing the fight and doing the mechanics, you have such a impenetrable mental fortitude of perseverance. And I felt like my group did not play like Ultimate Raiders. I felt like my group, particular members in the group, wanted to play luck of the draw. P5 RAF's a really good example of this. What you get in RAF is random. You could get the die bomb marker, you could get defamation, you could be a Tether player, you could be nothing, you could get absolutely nothing. And I felt like I had players that, rather than pushing the boundaries on how to resolve all these mechanics, like particularly the liquid flame mechanic, which is, I think, the hardest mechanic in Wrath, because you need to get used to how to bait the puddles without griefing the party that's going to Grinno for Empty Dimension. I felt like rather than being in a group of players that wanted to ace every single responsibility they could have, they wanted to instead play luck of the draw and hope they don't get particular mechanics to carry on with the fight. So not to play like an Ultimate Raider, to hope you don't get the liquid flame bait, and if you do get the liquid flame bait, then GG, you can't really be bothered figuring out how to do that mechanic properly. Not taking the challenge, you know. Cursed Meteors in P2 is another great example. If you get cursed, you don't give up. You try to fix the cursed pattern. You try to keep the pool alive, even if it's cursed. Having that Ultimate Raider mentality. And I think P3 exposed my group, particularly with the tower mechanic and how you bait Gusgogles. Rather than pushing to pixel perfect excellence on baiting Gusgogles, particular people in my group had if I'm close enough to the tower, then easy. I don't have to worry about how close I am to the middle of the tower when the ad spawns, because the way that mechanic works is it's proximity based, right? So the ad will spawn when you soak the tower. The ad will then do a line AoE on the closest person. Okay, so the closer you are to the middle of the tower, the more likely the ad will bait to you. And what I often noticed with that mechanic and the ins and the outs is that players in my static did not play like Ultimate Raiders. They did not push the boundaries on how in they could be without getting hit by the out, how out they could be without getting hit by the in, how close they could be to baiting the Gusgoggle without being hit by the outs or the ins, to mitigate any risk of, say, a player being slightly slow and they got close to your ad and took it, like baited the ad away from you. And because of how precise P3 is, it exposed my static as not being an Ultimate Raider. Ultimate Raiders actually try to prog the fight themselves. They don't go hand holding, right? And I felt there were players in my static that needed to be handheld. They couldn't do the mechanic consistently without being told what to do. Now, obviously, you know, every raid group has, you know, a leader that does call outs and things like that. It's one thing to do a call out just for the sake of it, because it's a free call out, right? Like P3, it's in first, then you're going out. That's an easy call out. Like, why not do it? Obviously, you do it, right? But it's a problem when players don't know how to resolve the mechanic and they need to rely on the call out. And this is why this fight is so menacing compared to T. With the exception, really, of Wormhole, you can get away with a lot of call-outs in T. Right? You can be told what you're doing next. Enumerations are out. Puddle water stacks coming out. You know, there are so many mechanics in T where you can do the call out. Perfect Alexander's a perfect example. You can just call out everything in alpha and beta except for a person's clone, because you'll be focusing on your clone, right? But this fight, if one player needs to rely on a call out to do the fight, it's over. The amount of personal responsibility this fight attributes to all 8 players is what distinguishes this fight from a fight like T. And I don't think T is easy, but this is a different breed of Ultimate. This fight is different. And I pondered to myself whether or not I'd do more static raiding in the future. in light of what I've learnt, it's hard to find a group of 8 nice people. It's not easy. It's hard to find a group of people you can get along with and respect, but also hard to find with not only those traits and attributes, a group of people that prog at a similar pace to you, that are determined at a similar level to you, that have a strong raiding mentality, that play like an ultimate raider. And it's almost impossible to find a group of people like that, to be honest with you. I just think it takes only one person to not be aligned with you for things to go south. And unfortunately that was my static in DSR. And one person decided to leave. And I decided I'd leave as well. Because the static was going to disband by 6.4. And I simply did not think we would clear by 6.4, and my belief aggravated when a particular player decided to leave, one of our best players in the static, because they had enough, to be honest. And so it got me thinking about static raiding and the risks you carry, because I never experienced what I experienced in T. This fight exposed to me, or really showed to me, that those Reddit threads that talk about statics breaking this fight are no joke. If players are not playing consistently, that's probably it. The frustration, the impatience will mount. I'm open to doing more ultimates in the future in a static context. But it does feel impossible to find a group of people that are on the same wavelength as you. And that's where the benefits of Party Finder came in for me. Because I cleared the fight, right? I cleared the fight on Party Finder, unlike in T. And what Party Finder taught me was, some days you can go about filling, at least in my server. You can wait hours on end, and you won't fill. But when you do fill, you know, you could play luck of the draw. People could have joined you, they're going to grief you for the next 2 hours, and that happens. But sometimes, your party fills with helpers, or people that know what they're doing, and people that are just as determined as you to clear the fight. And you take advantage of every lockout you have, because you play like an ultimate raider. You want to keep every pool live. You want to clear the fight. You know that what an ultimate does to you, what it takes to clear a fight, it pushes the boundaries. And when I was party finding this fight, every opportunity I had on Party Finder to prog, I tried my best. I played almost flawlessly to not make a single mistake. And that's how I cleared the fight. I ended up clearing it on Party Finder. For me, it was bitter. The player that left my static left 30 minutes before a Party Finder for an aim to clear I joined, filled, and I cleared. I cleared 30 minutes after I heard the news. And then I basically said, that's probably it for me then. So my clear is a bit hollow. I would have loved to clear for 7, clear for 8 screenshot. But unfortunately, it hasn't happened that way. And what I've learned about raiding, particularly of ultimates, is that sometimes it's just out of your hands. You can't control how people play. If people play poorly in your static, then that's just it. You know, and there's nothing you can do about it. So, I don't mean to make this video to discourage people from making statics, but I do make this video as a warning that, at least with this fight's different. And I'm not even that much of a raider. I've done these 2 fights, that's it, right? But I've learned a lot. And I hope you find my thoughts, if you're someone considering doing ultimates, or someone that has done, perhaps you did Ukob or Uru, and you want to do one of these two, something to think about, something that you want to be looking out for.